Howdy, 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 my name's Anachi Sasuke. Welcome back to Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki. In the last episode, technically in the last episode, I caught up on a thing I completely missed a few months ago. But in the last episode, we read about Dr. Glepsy, however you pronounce that. Google, how do I pronounce that? I don't know what I expected. How do I pronounce it? That didn't... Okay. That explained nothing. Anyway, we read those things, and in this episode we're going to start with new tricks and see how far we go. New tricks, or youth culture killed my dog. I can already tell this is going to be an adventure. 2 weeks ago, in an unnamed garage in a facility that didn't exist, a dog was trying to repair a hydraulic servo. He raised his paw and tapped away on the specially built keyboard that he had put together for him back when his lab was bigger and better stocked. The robotic arms assembled the servo and plugged it into the pump. The process was slow, so damn slow. The dog remembered a time less than a decade ago when he'd been the head of a major Foundation department. Back then, research and development had been the most exciting place to be in the Foundation, a whirlwind of discovery, and he had been the eye of the storm, one of the bright stars of the Foundation, a researcher filled with such vibrant energy that not even being involuntarily transformed into a dog could keep him down. 9 years ago, everyone in the Foundation had known his code name, Cain Pathos Crow. 9 years ago. He stretched his legs out, whimpering at the pain in his hips. Arthritis, his vet had told him. I'll try glucosamine injections and the painkillers if it gets too bad. But it's a problem not uncommon to the breed. He tapped a button. The needle on the gauge went up. It hovered around the line that he knew was red. There was a sudden crack and the buzzing of an alert siren. A spray of hydraulic fluid spurted from the servo's joint and splattered against the far wall of the garage. The dog growled angrily at the keyboard and smacked his paw against a big yellow button. The pressure went back down. The spray of hydraulic fluid ceased. Still trying to get that old thing fixed up? A smarmy voice asked. A man was walking into the room carrying a watermelon and a neat little carrying bag made of braided nylon ropes. The dog was surprised. He didn't often get unannounced visitors, maybe Dr. Mann and Agent Lament again, proposing to drag him along on yet another ill-conceived mission. No, it didn't smell like either of them. Wonder what that mission was. Let's open it and we'll read that after this. Unless that comes up later on. Man with the plan? Nope. Okay, so we'll read that after this. Then the dog saw that the visitor had a huge Cheshire cat grin, and his eyes hurt to look at, and his nose was too big for his ugly face. Clef, Professor Cain Pathos Crow said. Crow? Dr. Alto Clef put the melon down on a nearby table, ruthlessly clearing it of its clutter of wires and transistors with a sweep of his arm. Do you still have that neat laser cutter thing? He asked. Would be easier to slice this with than a knife. Put it on the work table over there, Professor Crow said. I'll set up the cutter. Clef complied as Cain rummaged through a big pile of miscellaneous gadgets before finally finding what he was looking for. A big gray box with a danger laser sticker haphazardly plastered onto the side. Would you mind attaching it to the robot arm for me? Cain asked. I'd do it myself, but you know, no thumbs. No problem, Clef said. Power plugs in here? Yeah. Cain said. You want to get some duct tape to attach it a bit more firmly. The bayonet mount broke a while back, and I haven't had the time to repair it. Haven't had the time, or haven't had the inclination? Clef asked. He dug at the open end of the roll of duct tape a bit until it came loose, then began to wrap it tightly around where the laser cutter attached to the robot arm. Doesn't really seem the kind of thing that would have stopped you in the past. I had an entire department in the past. These days I have to do everything myself, Cain said. He was also permitted the assistance of a few robotic devices, which he was grateful for. It got more and more awkward to deal with the few assistants he had sometimes, especially when the ones who'd become used to his unusual appearance got rotated out. He slid his paw along the oversized touchpad, maneuvering the crosshairs over the image of the watermelon, then began programming in the motion commands to the robot arm. Could be worse, he admitted. I could be in a kennel or in a shelter waiting to be put down. They'd never do that, not to one of the Foundation heroes. Heh, heroes, Kane said bitterly. Not many of those left in the Foundation these days. Not as many psychopaths either, Clef pointed out. And you can read a containment report without slogging through pages of useless commentary from every single member of the peanut gallery who thought they had something to say. He stepped back from the table and picked up a pair of dark ink goggles. One of the lenses was slightly cracked. Well, that's something at least, Kane admitted. Maybe that hood over there. Clef picked up a hood and draped it over Kane's head, carefully arranging the dark ink glass lenses over the dog's eyes. The professor tapped a couple keys on the laser, watched the simulation play out, and then hit the big red button. There was a whirring sound and the smell of ozone and a bright blue flash from the workbench. When their vision cleared, the watermelon had been sliced into 6 even pieces. Looks like it still works just fine, Clef said. Is that supposed to be a metaphor? Kane asked. If you choose to take it that way, yeah. Clef picked up one of the watermelon wedges and laid the other down in the cracked ceramic dish by Kane's cushioned bed. The gray-muzzled golden retriever lay down on the cushion and took a bite of the sweet, juicy red melon. The two old friends sat in silence for a while, enjoying their snack in companionable silence. Still trying to get the old girl working? Clef asked, gesturing to the hulking behemoth that lay in pieces all around the garage. Primary servo in the right hip keeps failing under pressure, Kane said. If I had the budget, I'd have the entire thing remilled. If I had permission, I'd recreate the original recipe through 914. As it is, I'm trying different welds and patches. None of them seem to hold. He took a big bite of his watermelon, crunching away as he chewed the crisp red fruit. Might want to double down on that, Clef said. Some big, powerful people might come by asking you to get it working again. Kane stopped eating. He stared intently at Clef, who was spitting his watermelon seeds into a rusty coffee can. Alright, you conniving old fuck, the dog growled. What do you want to know that you're not telling me? Clef tossed his watermelon rind back onto the work table and brought 2 fresh wedges of melon over for him and the professor. There was an incident yesterday, Clef said. A code Tempest Twilight at Site 17. An unknown outside force assaulted the facility. There were casualties and several containment breaches. One of those breaches was SCP-105. Iris, huh? So, Dan Tenson finally got his wish, may you rest in peace, Crow said sadly. I don't think anyone will chase her given that they've got her camera locked away inside a vault. 105 didn't run, Clef said. She picked up a sidearm off a dead agent's corpse and helped site security fend off the attackers. Iris? Picked up a gun and fought back. That shy little girl? She's not a shy little girl anymore, Crow, Clef said. 9 years will change you. 9 years locked up in a cell will change you a lot more. But the important thing is that even without her camera, 105 was a useful and capable asset. She was loyal to her jailers, even when she had every chance to bug out. So now the higher-ups are starting to get ideas, and some of them are pointing out that we've been falling behind in our efforts, and we've got an entire stockpile of assets sitting around not being utilized. And that eventually, one of them will remember a little experiment that we tried under General Bo that we've kept shuttered for 9 years as the worst idea that Foundation ever had. Pandora's box. Bingo, Clef said. And they're going to come to the surviving old fucks who did it in the first place and ask us to do it again. The question now becomes, what do we say to them? Taking a dump on their shoes would seem an appropriate response, Kane pointed out. They tossed us out into the cold. Did they? Clef asked. If they were going to toss us out into the cold, they would have given us the Kondraki or Dantensen the treatment, he smiled viciously. We were mothballed, Crow, like old battleships. Turned into museum pieces, but kept intact in case they ever needed us to go to war again. But unlike old battleships, we can choose whether or not we want to be reactivated. Or not. The 2 old friends continued to munch their watermelon in thoughtful silence. Fuck 'em, Kane said at last. Yeah, fuck 'em right up the ass, Clef agreed. We did what we wanted to once. Follow orders like good soldiers. Or what they wanted to once. What did it get us? Nothing at all, Clef agreed. They used us like snot rags and tossed us in the trash. There's no way I'm getting involved with their politicking and scheming again. I'm done killing, Clef said coldly. There's enough blood on my hands without adding more. So we're going to say no? We're going to say no. Clef fiddled with his half-eaten watermelon slice for a moment. Professor Kane stared intently at the green and yellow patterns on its rind. They're going to use her against you, Kane said at last. And they're going to offer you the one thing you can't say no to, Clef pointed out. In the end, doesn't matter what we want. Those puppeteers have us on their strings, and we'll do as they wish. He nudged his empty watermelon rind away from himself with his gray-muzzled nose. Clef took one huge bite of his melon. His grin turned positively shark-like. Then we better milk him for all we can in the process. All we can get in the process, Cliff said, spitting bits of melon and juice from his half-full mouth. When his vet came to see him days later, the dog was refitting a hydraulic servo back into a gigantic egg-shaped robot. "Hello, Professor," the man said. He was a balding white man in his 50s or 60s wearing a lab coat and carrying a medical bag. "Hi, Cog." "How are you feeling today?" Gears asked. Is his name really Dr. Cog Gears? He opened up his bag and began laying out his instruments and supplies on the table. His tone was flat, his voice expressionless, and others his mannerisms would have seemed cold. Kane knew better. Gears was not a veterinarian by trade, but after Kane had been confined to this facility, Gears had one day announced that he'd studied and achieved competency in the field of veterinary medicine and had asked to be assigned as Kane's personal physician. Administration had said yes. It wasn't often that someone like Gears did something touching. The golden retriever climbed carefully onto the low table. Gears began his examination. Weight, measurements, a stethoscope to the heart and lungs, taking pulse, checking for swelling in lymph nodes, palpitating the abdomen for tumors or abnormalities, teeth and claws, paws and limbs. "Slight deterioration in the hips," Gears murmured. "The glucosamine seems to be having an effect. We'll try upping the dosage." He examined Kane's face closely. A few more gray hairs around the muzzle. "In other words, not too bad for a 15-year-old dog, but pretty shitty for a 35-year-old man," Kane said. "Indeed," Gears said calmly. He put down his stethoscope and picked up a scaling tool. "Some development of calculus around the gum line. Surprising. My toothbrushing robot broke down. I've been using dentist sticks," Kane said. "I suggest getting it repaired," Gears said. "In the meantime, I'll do a teeth cleaning." It was a long and boring process as Gears carefully scraped the plaque buildup along Kane's teeth. He was just finishing up with the molars when another figure had entered. Kane wasn't surprised. He'd been expecting this visitor for a long time. The intruder was a black woman of medium height in a pinstripe suit. Her hair was curly and her mouth was smiling. "Professor Crow, I presume," she said. "Dr. Gears, I'm 0510. "No, you're not," Kane said, his words mumbled around Gears' dental equipment. The woman gave him an odd look. "Sorry." He waited for Gears to extract his cleaning tools from his mouth. "But no, you don't smell like an 05. They all have, well, you don't smell like one." "Good to know," the woman said. "You are, of course, correct. I am not, in fact, 0510. I am, in truth, her decoy. I'm called Salt. This is, of course, classified at the highest level. I do not need to tell you the consequences if you breathe a word of this to anyone I trust." Affirm. "Yeah, sure," Kane said. "Excellent," Salt said. "In that case, I would like to direct you to begin research into the issue of the anomalous scent that surrounds members of the O5 Council. Provided, of course, that you can do so in between your other projects." He extended a large stack of papers to the Golden Retriever. "Cog?" Kane asked. "Of course." Dr. Gears picked up the stack of papers and helped Kane to arrange them into a machine that looked like a cross between a music stand and a microfiche reader. It hummed and crunched and whirred, and then began to project images of the pages onto a screen big enough for his tired old dog eyes to read them clearly. It was all there. The Egg Walker, the Power Suit, the Sonic Pulse Cannon, the Heat-Seeking Atomic Disruptor, the Harmonic Dispersion Wand, and one more. Project Olympia. Its shuddering had been the biggest heartbreak of all. "Hot damn," Kane thought, his tail wagging unconsciously. "We're back in business." What's my dog? Puppies for sale, security camera, personal injury, security cameras. Now then, this little side story right here. This side story is long as hell. Was he already a dog when this happened? Yep. "Stay close, Agent," Dr. Crow said, trotting quietly along the edge of the forest. "I'm fairly certain that we can maneuver this way, find the object in question, and very quickly remove ourselves from the vicinity." The agent was a young fellow, and Kane's practiced canine nose could detect this telltale sense of fear, sweat, the hint of urine. He folded his ears, trotting closer to the trees and peering around them. There, should be near that. The sounds of laughter reached his ears, and he turned quickly, looking at it as a small group of children started running towards the tree line, maybe 100 yards ahead. "Damn," he muttered, growling softly. "Agent, hurry down there, stop them. They may be potential worshippers," he said. The last thing they needed was to let the Church of the Broken God get their hands on more members, much less sacrifices. The agent hurried off, and Kane leaned back, sitting on his haunches and watching them. The kid was young, and he might do well if he had a little more training. He just wished that he hadn't gotten paired up with the new kid. He was thinking about the children who might be lost in moments if the agent didn't run faster when the net fell over his head. He yelped in surprise, twisting. His first thought was that the church had found him, but as he was hefted into the air, he caught the clean, crisp uniform that could only be insurgency. He was certain that he was about to be dissected when the old man holding the net smiled at him congenially. That's a good boy. Kane stared at the twinkling blue eyes of the dog catcher. God damn it, not again. The mission is simple enough, Lament said. I don't see why you're bringing that thing again, he said, pointing to a man's medical bag. Simply put, Agent, you carry the tools of your trade, man said, gesturing to Lament's gun belt, and I will carry mine. Yes, but yours normally end up causing more harm than good. Remember when we had to deal with those two Marshall, Carter, and Dark reps? Man nodded. They were extremely interested in my collection of scalpels. You pulled them out and showed them to them one at a time. They admire the quality workmanship. You did it during the middle of a negotiation, completely unprompted. They were interested. They were terrified. Bah! They had a professional, courteous curiosity about my position in the Foundation. Oh yeah. And then you just had to start telling them about their names. My scalpels are like my children. Lament took a moment to rub his eyelids. Not when you name them after people who died while you were using them, then they're more your corpses. Nonsense. Those people would be thrilled to live on in such a noble manner. I think they'd have been more thrilled to just live on. Aye, but there's the rub. Did you see my new one? Her name's Alice. Lament cringed. God damn it. Lament listened as man described the lateral incision into the thoracic cavity with the sort of detail that only someone who truly and deeply loved their work could have expressed. He continued to listen to the story of the removal of the infected bowel, the careful preservation of the parasites, the implantation of the standard tracking device, and that is when we realized that one of the parasites had already moved to her heart. It had ripped itself free and started chittering around in her ribcage, and I am, as you know, not one for dealing with that kind of nonsense. Of course. Man nodded firmly. I plunged my blade through her heart and into its heart. He mimed the stab a couple of times. It was a double whammy! I don't think I've ever managed something like that before. You don't think? Well, normally when I stab someone in the chest, I don't get a chance to examine them closely. Ah, of course. I know, such a waste. You should have seen her kidneys, loveliest shade of brown. Right, yes, well, I'm gonna check out a car if you want to start calling the local pounds. What? Why do you get to pick the car? You got to pick the car last time. Because when you picked the car, you insisted on a fucking Toyota Avalon. The Toyota Avalon has 16 cubic feet of trunk space. We are transporting bodies across the border. We're getting Kane out of a damn dog pound. I think you underestimate the danger of this mission, Agent. We might have dozens of bodies to transport. We shouldn't have any. Dozens! If I get the Toyota, will you call the dog pounds? Of course! Lament nodded, waving man off as he trudged down the hall towards the motor pool. Some days he wished he'd stayed on field duty. Psychopaths made so much more sense on field duty. When he got back, man was just laying down the phone. Only one shelter has had any dogs matching Kane's description. Judging from the report of the agent on duty when Kane was abducted, this should be fairly open and shut. Lament nodded thankfully, walking to the car and heading towards the driver's side. Man coughed significantly. Lament raised his eyebrow. As the senior rank, I think I should drive, man mentioned. I don't think so. The last time you drove, we got pulled over and the officer didn't like your collection. He liked it eventually. Dragging a man doesn't count as making him like something. It doesn't count as anything. Semantics. I still insist on driving. No. Fine. I will, albeit reluctantly, allow you to drive without complaint, so long as I can pick the music. No mariachi this time, right? No, I was thinking something more classic. Fine. Man rubbed his hands together triumphantly, walking to the passenger side and getting into the car. As Lament fell into the driver's seat, Man lovingly pulled out a cassette tape from his breast pocket. Today, the Bee Gees. You can drive? Too late, Man said, hitting play. More Than a Woman came on as Lament drove out of the parking garage, and he decided it wasn't that bad, until Man started singing along. Want the cover story? Lament asked. Man pulled out an open envelope, removing the folder and handing Lament 2 fake IDs. It seems that I am to be a Ricardo Mastablan, and you are my loyal traveling companion and manservant, Percy. Percy? Yes, Percy. Percy. You are aware that Percy is not a name that is used by anyone, ever. I grew up with a Percy. Do you have any concept of what someone my age would be named? I'm 35. Percy, to be named Percy, you have to be like 60 minimum. Ah, but you've forgotten we're travelers. I fail to see what that has to do with anything. We're coming from a place where Percy is a very common name. And where is that? Spain. Percy is not a common Spanish name. There is no one in Spain named Percy. I beg to differ. Consensus records show that Percival, he said with a pained accent, was once used as a name 7 times in the past decade, but not Percy. Well, no. My identification says Percy. You anglicized the name. You anglicized my name, but left yours Ricardo. You don't even look Spanish. You look Scottish or something. Man let out a long flapping sound through his lips. Scottish. Scottish? Are you being a racist ass, Limit? I'm not being a racist ass. Man sounds Scottish. You look Scottish. I mean, you've even got the mustache. Man's hand flew up to his upper lip, covering it for a moment. That is enough, sir, he said sharply. You were out there in the field too long working with the Doddridge fellow. You have lost all sense of decency and propriety. I'm afraid that being named Percy does that to you. I am an Englishman, sir. Noted. Next time I'm picking the names. Fine. Next time, pick the names. Pick the cover story. Pick the whole damn thing. I don't care. Fine. 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 They sat in silence for perhaps 7 minutes before Lament spoke. So, what are the cover occupations? Man pulled out a thick piece of manila paper, complete with embossed steel and gold lettering. I am a certified dog whisperer. Lament pulled up outside the Spokane Animal Control office, sighing. Was he equipped? He asked. Man shook his head. No collar. We're going to be going in under the guise of recovering a client's precious pet, which only I can identify thanks to my ability to understand dogs. Lament opened his mouth to speak, then shut it. Opened it again, then stopped, taking a deep breath. He motioned towards the door. All you! Thank you, Agent, Man said, smiling and opening the door, striding into the pound as if he were entering a royal banquet hall. He stopped in front of the glass window, tapping on it with his finger as a fat, sour-faced woman turned her eyes up at him. She had a 40-year-old face, though she couldn't have been a day over 35. Her skin sagged, signifying she'd once been larger, much larger. Name? I'm Ricardo Mestablon, Man said, putting on the accent that sounded a fourth Japanese and the rest French-Canadian. I called earlier. I'm looking for the retriever. The woman looked unimpressed. What is the dog's name? She asked. His name is Cain Pathos Crow, Man said. He's a very important dog, belongs to the Crow family from West Seattle near the Hampshire crossings. Lament opened his mouth again, holding up a finger for a moment, then stopped. He stopped, dead, and took a step back, looking on the floor, counting the tiles. 1 tile, 2 tiles, 3 tiles. Did he have a collar on? Nay, Man said. Lament flinched. He slipped off his leash and was away from his owners before they could recover him. However, I can easily identify him as I am a dog whisperer. 14, 15, 16. The woman smacked her gum, blowing a bubble with it and letting it snap loudly. Like Cesar Romero? No, Man said sharply. Cesar Milan. The woman narrowed her eyes. Then who is Cesar Romero, huh? Lament coughed and she turned and looked at him. He was the Joker from Batman, you know, Adam West. The woman's fat piggy fingers wiggled, the dozens of rings on them flashing. He's that dog whisperer on the Learning Channel. Lament bristled. Now, Percy, she's probably correct. Lament stared at her. Cesar Romero was the Joker from Batman. She glared at him, her drawl becoming even thicker and more grating. He is that dog whisperer from TLC, or TLC. Lament took a step forward and Man turned, putting an arm across his chest, whispering sharply, Let it go, Lament, we have a mission. Lament hissed through his teeth quietly, He's the goddamn Joker! I know that, Lament, you know that, we both know. We can't teach this one. Lament stopped, his eye twitching as he took a step back. His lips were tight as he swiveled them slightly. You're probably right. She smiled sourly and nodded. Says here we have 2 retrievers in. Come on back and see and you can whisper at him. As she stood up, Lament's hand twitched towards his gun, but he stopped himself. She wasn't worth it. She just wasn't worth it. The woman led both of them back into the rear room, Lament making sure not to look too carefully at the cages. Animals were not allowed on site unless they were anomalous. The last guy who had brought his anomalous hamster was still being required to run a dozen tests a day and submit his findings continually to the site director. It wasn't pretty. She pointed to the cage with the 2 dogs. There they are. Whisper 'em. she said, looking at Man. She was breathing hard with the exertion of staying standing. Of course, Man said, flourishing his hands. He looked at the two dogs. Now, which one of you is Kane? Please, bark once for me, he said, spreading his fingers and wiggling them, looking every ounce the 1920s stage magician. Neither of the dogs made a sound. The one on the left turned its head to the side. Man stopped and frowned. Kane, I need you to bark, so we know it's you. This time the one on the right turned its head. The one on the left yawned, then turned 3 times and lay down on the floor. Man motioned for Lament to come closer. Percy, he said, I need you to listen carefully, he said. The woman frowned. I thought you was the whisperer. Oh, yes, I am, but he's the listener, he added, pointing at Lament. The woman nodded. Oh, yeah, of course. Lament nodded a little, leaning down next to the fence, listening carefully as Man said, Is there a reason you were silent and still? Are you worried? Afraid? Speak and let us know your needs. Lament listened, then frowned, looking at the two dogs. He turned his head to look up at Man, then shrugged. Kane, this is pretty important now. You need to let us know. Let us know, Kane. The dog on the left farted audibly. Lament coughed, standing again. Neither of these... Man nodded yes. So where is he? I haven't the foggiest. You said you called all the shelters. I did, I'm certain of it. The woman smacked her lips again. So he ain't here then. Lament turned and looked at her, reaching into his pocket to pull out a chocolate. Piece of candy? He asked her. She eyed Lament, then took the candy, nodding and still glowering. Both of them turned, walking out of the kennel and walked back towards the car. If he's not here, Lament began, then where is he? Don't have the foggiest. What did you give her? Class A, said standard procedure. Might be too strong with someone like her. God, I hope so, he said, sighing deeply and climbing into the driver's seat. Inside the kennel, the woman carefully unwrapped the chocolate, popping it into her mouth and heading back towards the front desk. Sitting down in her chair, she swallowed it, wishing she'd asked for another, and leaned back, staring at the ceiling and trying to make pictures out of the water scenes. The fat one on the left looked like a star, and it was her favorite. That night when she went home, she watched television and fell asleep. The next morning, she looked at herself in the mirror, shocked to discover that she was no longer 23. She turned to the side, looking at herself. But damn, girl, you have lost some weight, she said. Lament let out a tired sigh, something he has done far, far too often in this story, as he looked through the front windshield driving back towards the city proper. So if he isn't here, where is he? Man tapped his finger on the console, eyebrows knitted together as he thought. Well, none of the other shelters had a golden retriever, and none had recently been adopted, so he has to be somewhere. Then where? What were they investigating? A splinter faction of the church believed to be worshipping a possible artifact. It was a simply reconnaissance mission. You don't think that the Church of the Broken God has inducted the dog catcher just in case the Foundation sent a sapient canines to spy on them? It was my first suspicion. Lament stared out the windshield still, his face flat and expressionless. Hell, not like we have anything better to do. Ditto! Barbara and Jackson had been getting bored. I wish you wouldn't call them that. I knew Jackson. Lament quietly stepped closer to the clearing, watching as the large group of people seemed to be bowing and flailing their arms in the air, eyes ascending to heaven as they wiggled each of their fingers separately. Man was grinning wildly. This looks like cake! They're not even looking for us! The man at the front of the crowd started to say something. Lament held up his hand for Man a moment, listening. And he will find you, keep you, and set you free. That doesn't sound right. Man was rifling through the field bag for flashbangs. He looked up at Lament. What doesn't sound right? Listen. Man stood, bringing the flashbang with him in his hand, fiddling with the detonator. Several of the worshippers raised their hands in praise. One of them fell on the ground, shaking and writhing in place. All your mortal bonds will be severed, and you will be uplifted. Another one of them jumped up and started dancing across the front of the woodland church, twisting and turning, singing hallelujahs and glories unto the highest. Oh, God, these people aren't broken, God. I think they're... Lament didn't get a chance to finish the sentence. The flashbang slipped from Man's hand, landing on the ground at his feet, as a blinding flash caught Lament full in the face. Fuck! I can't see! He stammered more loudly than intended, largely due to the bang that came with the flash. Lament staggered to the side, feeling for the tree when he felt hands close around his arms, pulling him forward. He was passed up from hand to hand, his ears ringing as he felt himself forced to his knees, a hand landing on his forehead. Through the ring, he barely made out the shouting voice. Would you be healed? Lament blinked his eyes, nodding slightly as he saw the man raise his hand to the sky, then bring it down hard against Lament's face, slapping the hell out of him. Oh, Jesus. Hallelujah! Can you see, brother? Can you see by the light of holy God? Lament squinted up at him, just barely making out his outline. I can see. He can see! Another round of hallelujah went up, and Lament felt himself being dragged to his feet, people shaking his hands and hugging him, holding him against them and dancing around the room. At one point, some of the people got out snakes and started wearing them. That was when he ran. Lament sat on the curb of the park next to man, the latter of whom was bandaging his leg. Stupid things. You're not allowed to use those anymore. You act like it was a major problem. You were fine. You were better than fine. You gave those people something they might never have had in their lives. Lament managed to keep from punching man as the white square-shaped truck drove by. The old man in the seat moving about 15 miles an hour. He stopped in front of them. Either of you two lose a dog? He asked. Golden Retriever? The man grinned, putting the truck in park and stepping out. That's the one! I've been looking for this boy's owners all day! He said, walking around to the back door and opening it. He worked a cage, then hooked a leash onto something inside, tugging it and bringing the dog out, smiling as he walked him over. The dog was wagging madly, jumping a bit as he got close to the two of them. The old man laughed. Oh yeah, this one's yours. Lament just stared at the old man as he waved and walked back to the truck, closing the back of it, then getting in and driving away. Stared and stared, his jaw slightly slackened. Kane rested on his haunches. What a nice guy, he said, smiling and panting with just a touch. He gave me a treat. Man finished bandaging his leg finally. I thought you didn't like treats. I like some treats. What treats? Kane shuffled for a moment, either paw rising and falling. Chocolate? God damn it, Kane, you know you can't have chocolate. You're a dog. I can have some chocolate. No! No chocolate! God, I did not go to medical school for my patients to ignore my advice. Lament stopped for a moment, looking at man. Medical school? Yes, but he's a dog. Yes? Wouldn't that be veterinary school? Man peered carefully at Lament. Lament peered back. Slowly, both of them looked at Kane, who shrugged. Anyhow, I'm ready to go back to base now. Lament felt a headache coming on slowly. He reached down and undid the leash, walking towards the car and rubbing his ears. Kane padded along beside him while Man gipped in behind them. As the three of them got into the car, Man reached over and turned on the music. Stand Alive came on as he pulled out, and Kane barked once. Oh! Turn this one up! I love this song! This time Lament sang along too. Okay, so that was absolutely ridiculous, but I'm glad I read it. Next up is, The Wolves at the Door. Man, another one. Well, okay, I already read that. I don't need to read that again. Iris was just trying to solve a crossword puzzle when there was a knock on her door. It wasn't a scheduled knock, which was a bit worrying, but at least there weren't any explosions this time. Two women in suits came in, followed by guards. The women appeared to be twins, though there was a subtle difference that Iris couldn't quite pick up. They were darker skinned with curly hair, wearing matching gray suits with pink pinstripes. One carried a tablet like she was carrying a weapon. Good morning, Miss Thompson, one of the women said. She wasn't used to being called Miss Thompson, it was always either Iris or 105. Good morning, Iris said. This is Miss Salt, she said, indicating the woman who was almost but not quite identical to her. You may refer to me as 0510. Hello, Iris had caught off guard. Was this a trick? She'd heard of the 05 Council, but they weren't ever supposed to actually meet skips. I wanted to thank you personally for the actions you undertook last week, the woman smiled broadly. Oh, well, Iris began, but the woman waved her off. Oh, you did what you had to do, I understand, but the fact that you were able to do it? That was remarkable, Miss Thompson, and it caused no little amount of talk. Talk? Iris wondered where this was headed and what this woman's game was. You were a great help, and it occurs to us that you could be even more help. You and others like you. We've been reviewing the files on MTF Omega-7 and we'd like to... No, Iris said, horrified and appalled. You can't be serious. I'm perfectly serious, the 05 said. You haven't seen how things have gone the last 9 years. There are more anomalies every year and we're stretched thin. We're guarding the doors as best we can, but the howls are growing louder. We can't ignore the resources we already have. We're making a new task force. As an anomalous person with field experience, we'd like you in charge of one of the field teams. Didn't you people learn anything from last time? Iris put one hand to her temple, trying to calm down. Just thinking about him made her heart race. Yes, and we've learned a lot since too. That's why we can make it work this time. You're crazy. He killed the entire team, his own people, and you want to try again? The woman shook her head. We have no intention of using 0762 again. That was obviously a mistake. You don't? Iris's eyes narrowed. She didn't trust this woman. She was too eager, trying too hard to convince her. For a woman who claimed to be an 05, that suggested situation wasn't quite how she presented it. The situation wasn't quite how she presented it. Someone that high up should be dictating, not negotiating. We want you and others like you. Agents with anomalous abilities who can be trusted. People who serve because they want to, not because they have an explosive collar or other coercion. The woman had a glow of sincerity on her face. Of course she wasn't telling the full truth either. She wasn't nearly as sure about not using Abel as she wanted Iris to think. She was a terrible liar, and the guilt of that omission bubbled to the surface of her eyes. But she was still sincere. If she didn't believe in everything she was telling Iris, she believed in the idea of this new team. That was what made Iris distrust her. The woman in green who convinced her to join Omega 7, she'd never been sincere. It was a toss-up if she believed anything that came out of her mouth. Do you remember what it was like to use your camera, the 05 continued, to explore your abilities? I have some experience with things like that. There's nothing like it. And it did strike home because Iris missed the photographs. She missed learning the new things she could do with it. She missed being able to just play with it. It had been such a fun game, no more than a game. It had been magic. Magic that she could touch. Magic that was a part of her. It was what the woman in green had held out to get her to cooperate. Well, Iris had been 14 at the time, young, gullible, and stupid. The years had taught her better. No, she told the woman, I'm sorry, but I can't do this again. You weren't there. I lost friends, all of them. Well, it's your choice, of course, the woman said. But we're going forward regardless. We have to. Things are getting more desperate every day. If it's not you, it will be someone else. Someone who's just a child, maybe. Someone who doesn't know what they're getting into. Iris felt a chill come over her. You can't do that. You don't understand what it was like. You don't know what it would do to them. You're right, she said. I don't know. There's really only one person who does. One person who can help them. Iris wanted to strangle the woman, to break her neck. It would be so easy. Before the guard could even draw his pistol, she could probably have the woman dead. He had taught her well. She pushed the anger down instead. Coldly, she said, You bitch. You absolute bitch. The woman didn't say anything for a moment, then smiled. You'll join then? Iris nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Very good. The head of your security detail will visit you soon, and give you further instructions. Welcome aboard, Miss Thompson. Okay. So, anywho, next up would be light-dependent reactions. And then there's a bunch of girls' night out things, which is 3 different stories. Which sound like it's probably going to be interesting. And this is going to be a long one. A long one. So, I think I'm probably going to end the episode here and start the next episode with light-dependent reactions because I was not expecting the random dog story to take as long as it did. But it was interesting. It didn't really accomplish anything at all, but it was interesting. So, this has been Anashi Sasuke. This was episode 30 of Let's Read the SCP Foundation Wiki, and the next episode we'll read light-dependent reactions and probably Girls' Night Out. And then the next episode after that, Museum of Idiots. So, thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Later.